that. Technically speaking, yeah, no, I'm going to start it now. Yeah, here we go. So technically speaking, is going to be a busy event, I think.
Tonight.
Yes. So we just need our good doctor here and we're good to go. Oh, there she is. We need to bring her here.
Hi, guys. So let me try to do the video.
I got you here.
Okay, join.
Should be able to oh, hello.
I'm Kitty. Okay, so I am going to. Hi, Alex.
Hi, Kitty.
Okay, guys, Dr. Connealy is coming right now. Dr. C.
Fantastic. All right, gang. So welcome everybody. Allison, Anna, Barbara, Carrie, Christine, Chanel, David, another David, Deborah.
We put in that. Did you tell
Diane, Donald, Doug, Elizabeth, Alvy, Dr. Connealy. Hello.
Hi, Alex. How are you?
It's been a moment, my friend.
I know. I'm alive and well.
I'm so happy to hear that. You look fabulous as well.
Thank you. Where's mine?
So welcome everybody. We're going to get started just in about 3 minutes. Let everybody get here. We had the capacity for this event is 500. We had 650 people register. So
Great. Awesome.
we'll see what happens out of that. But thrilled to have everybody here. And I have a few copies of your book that I'm going to be giving away.
Oh, thank you.
To the people. Life transforming book, Mountain Valley Spring Water, our favorite.
How are you doing? What are you doing these days?
Well, you know, I had a large conference planned for May of 2020. And
Right.
they were like, no, you can't do it, COVID.
Right.
So I had a couple of years to kind of reinvent what I want to do with myself. And so I'm designing a national platform where we assign nurse practitioners directly to clients. And their job is to become the world expert in this person, genetics, digestion, toxicity levels, all that stuff. And then optimize them over 12 months and hopefully for the rest of their life. So the focus is, you know, to extend lifespan, condense the disease of aging, like that.
Wonderful.
Yeah, so it's we took on some clients and we have a handful of nurse practitioners, and now we kind of got the model to work, and now we're looking to really move it forward. And then we'll have physicians who kind of are training our people on the fundamentals of you know, what it takes to stay healthy and well rather than manage diseases. So Dr. Rosenthal, meet Dr. Connealy. I don't think you ever met, right?
Pleasure. No, I've never met you. I've seen you and listened to you before. It's a pleasure to meet.
Nice to meet
And
you.
Dr. Jimmy Kilimadzoglu, you may have met him. He was at our conference back when you were there.
Nice to meet you.
Yes, good to see you again.
Thank you.
So I know that nutrition is an important part of your program, and dentistry is an important part of your program. And so we're going to talk about a lot of different things here. Let's see. Well, it's 9 o'clock. Great. Okay. So we'll get started. So welcome everybody. My name is Alex Lubarsky. I am the founder of Science of Human Optimization, a company that works with some of the top functional medicine doctors in the country. And as we begin this program, I'd like to start with a question. And we have a lot of health professionals here who are joining us, nurse practitioners, my favorite. And my question is, if you could design the healthcare system based on the way you imagined it would be before you got involved in healthcare, would it be anything like it is in its current form? So if you guys can just throw some answers into the chat here, I would appreciate that. It says we are in practice screen. That was before. Okay, we're good. So yeah, please tell us what you think about that. If you could redesign healthcare, would it be the same as you imagined it before you got involved? Is it the same or is it different? Yes, no. Please let us know. In my mind, the current healthcare system is kind of like a freight train headed full speed ahead on the tracks. You got the driver of the train, the engineer, shoveling coal into the pit, and it's all red and hot, and it's going as fast as it can, this train. But then, every once in a while, it breaks the laws of nature and physics and just kind of doubles its speed. And then, just to show off, it doubles it again. So our healthcare system back in the early 60s was only about $27 billion per year as an expense. And then by 1995, we hit $1 trillion. And then by 2005, we doubled to $2 trillion. And now we're at 4.3 trillion, headed full speed to 5 trillion. So in no sensible reality is this sustainable on any level. And eventually this train is going to come to a hard stop. And I think it's going to cause a lot of damage to a lot of things. And hopefully it won't damage the country enough to, destroy it completely. So what I love about being here today with my great professionals is that not only these doctors are at the top of their field, they're also independent practitioners who at some point decided they did not fit into this third-party payer bureaucracy model, and they designed their own independent practices, and I would say very successfully. So what I'll ask is, I'm going to introduce my co-interviewers here, and I'll introduce our guest keynote speaker. And then Dr. Connealy, if you could take about 10 minutes, just going to lay out your plan, your approach, and then we'll chat back and forth. We'll ask you questions, and we'll invite our guests in the audience to participate as well. Well, if you have questions, if you'd like to make a comment, throw that in the question section. We'd love to hear from you. I'm going to be giving away Dr. Connealy's books to the best questions and the most enthusiastic participants. And chat is disabled. Why is chat disabled? Don't know why that would be. Don't know why. It's seeing nothing here. Well, you could throw it in the Q&A then. I'll try to fix it as we move forward. Okay, so we have Dr. Joshua Rosenthal, who is a board-certified sleep and regenerative medicine physician, integrating his expertise in circadian biology, mitochondrial medicine, and photobiomodulation. He helps his clients rebuild their mind and body at the cellular and subcellular levels. Dr. Joshua, want to say hi?
Hello, how are you?
Our next guest, or my co-interviewer, co-host, is Dr. Jimmy Kilimadzoglu. He's a renowned biomimetic dentist, graduated from Stony Brook University School of Dental Medicine in 2002. And prior to studying at dental school, he attended the Adelphi University in Garden City, New York, where he graduated magna cum laude. He specializes in oral optimization. And our honored guest here is Dr. Leigh Erin Connealy. And I'm going to just take a moment here to read her bio. Dr. Connealy is a prominent leader in the integrative and functional medical field with over 30 years experience, taking the best of all sciences, including homeopathic, conventional treatments for cancer, chronic illness, nutrition, lifestyle approach. She's the medical director of 2 unique clinics in Irvine, California, the Center for New Medicine and Center for healing. The combined clinics have become the largest integrative medical clinic in North America and are visited by patients worldwide, with some 65,000 patients so far. She's the author of 2 books, Be Perfectly Healthy, which came out in 2009, and then The Cancer Revolution, published in 2017, which has revolutionized the landscape of medicine. And in 2017, 18, 19, 20, 21, and 22, she was named one of the top 50 functional and integrative doctors in the country. It is a great pleasure to have Dr. Connealy here with us. So, Dr. Connealy, nice to have you. Nice to see you. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much for having me. It's my privilege and honor to be with all of you today. And these are exciting times for all of us because, as Alex mentioned, we are in a crisis, but in crises is opportunity, right? And so, yes, we rank 43rd in the world in healthcare. And we have spent 2.5 times more than any other country. So obviously the existing paradigm of the delivery of medicine isn't working. We should be creating geniuses and Navy SEALs for people today, because for what we know, we can do that. And unfortunately, though, we have 93% of the population who is metabolically unhealthy. And so people are awakening slowly, but it is happening. More and more people are talking about health. And then our younger people are having diseases, our 30-year-olds are having diseases of a 60 and 70-year-old. So now everyone is seeing the crises of healthcare. And we must take a time right now and to really say this isn't working, and everybody individually and collectively, we all have to do our part, because self-care is the new healthcare. We can't rely on the doctor today or the hospital today or the institution today to save our lives, because we have that and that is not working. If you look at autism, is the highest rates it's ever been, 1 in 37. Our young children, 60% or more, have chronic illnesses. Our teenagers have the highest anxiety, depression, and suicide. And then our young people have more diseases than ever before. So we now know that our existing medical paradigm is not the one that's going to create thriving, healthy, functional people. And so I started out 37 years ago. I started out in conventional medicine, but in the beginning of my career, I saw that we cannot use drugs to treat people. And because drugs are further toxins that will inhibit a very important vital function in our body. And so I started teaching lifestyle. I started out with a dietitian 37 years ago in my practice in Los Angeles. And now I practice everything from human optimization to stage 4 cancer. I got into cancer because I was born in the 50s. My mother, when she was pregnant with me, took DES with me. And I found out when I was 16 years old that my mother had taken that drug. And the letter said that you need to go to Cancer Institute to get evaluated because of my risk of cancer. So from that point on, I took my life in my hands and I started studying everything on how to prevent cancer. And that's where I am today. I have been teaching people about prevention and early detection of cancer, but it doesn't sell because people think I'm fine. And all of my patients were fine the day before they were diagnosed with cancer. So I tell people, if you feel fine, you need to verify that you are fine and in tip-top shape. The top diseases is heart disease, which we can prevent. I don't, in my practice today, have 1 heart attack a year. Cancer is about 1 in 2, I would say 45% of the population. And the third is the system, the iatrogenic cause, which is the doctor causing the problem, prescribing medications or errors. So that was published several years ago by Johns Hopkins. So the third leading cause is the actual practicing of medicine. And so we must do things differently. We need to practice a preventive, proactive, personalized predictive form of medicine today. And we need to start when the mother is pregnant with that. Well, actually, before she even thinks about pregnancy, she needs to get healthy so that she can have a healthy baby, because that's when it all starts. Because if you look at epigenetics, it all starts from the time because the mother is downloading all the toxins to the baby. And so in utero, the baby is developing. I'm a perfect example. I was given DES and I was given DES in utero, and I suffered many complications from the DES in utero that manifested as an adult. And so as a result, I know how much in utero affects a baby. So the nutrition of the mother, the mind of the mother, the emotional state of the mother, the exposure, the toxicity, EMFs, et cetera, et cetera. So we need to teach mothers how to first prepare their body for this beautiful miracle that they're going to grow. And then when they're pregnant, do the protective measures. And then as soon as that baby is born, we need to take care of that baby and shepherd them in the right way. And so that's where it starts. But we need to have communities of healing, not communities of illness and disease and defection. And so this group here, I know has the same desires and wishes and missions. And we together need to collaborate and cooperate to create the mighty nation that we should all be enjoying and we should have.
Awesome. Thank you, Dr. Connealy. Yay. So I would start with, in your book, you talk about a lot of things. One of those is vitamin D. And I know there's a direct correlation between vitamin D deficiency and cancer. But for the most part, most people either don't know or are deficient or both in their vitamin D levels. So can we talk? I think it's a good place to start. What is your feeling about vitamin D levels and its correlation with cancer?
Right. Well, vitamin D, we check that on every man, woman, and child that comes into the clinic. And I would say that about 90, what I see about 90, probably 95+% of people are deficient in vitamin D. And the only people who aren't are taking it. And so, because people don't get outside and get sunshine, which is how your body makes its own vitamin D. And so I like to have an optimal level about 50 to 70. And vitamin D is an hormone and a vitamin. And it influences over 3,000 genes, influencing the upregulation or the downregulation. So this is very, very important, not just in cancer, but other diseases. So everyone needs to understand the value of vitamin D, number one, but number two, that one, it would be ideal if you could get vitamin D from the sun. If sometimes though, people are inside, unfortunately, a lot of their day, and they're glued to their computer. So they're not getting the adequate levels of sun exposure that we all need. And then if they don't get that, so they need to be supplementing with vitamin D. So I think every doctor should be adequately checking the vitamin D, which is not typically done in a conventional medical workup.
Absolutely. Dr. Rosenthal, Jimmy, any thoughts, questions?
I agree wholeheartedly. And I think you need to supplement and supplement as much as you can to get your vitamin D.
That's right. Because the sun is just not the vitamin D. It's all the energy also that vitamin D supplies to the body. So.
If I may chime in, so we just told our audience that vitamin D is something that's very easy to implement, right? We know you need sun exposure, but if you can't get enough, most of us can't, then you take the appropriate supplements. So that's pretty easy to implement. And like you said, it's important to track it. Like every few months, you test it. If you had to pick your top recommendation that almost everybody can implement easily, what would it be?
My top things, well, first and foremost, I would be saying to set your mind every day. Most of us live in our subconscious, probably about 90%. And so most people are not thinking about their thoughts, and your cells are listening to your thoughts 24 hours a day. And so we need to be conscious because we have too many old recordings that may not be serving us. And so we need to think about, before we wake up and get out of bed, we need to set our mind to the most powerful healing thoughts every single day, and then reset that during the day when you're mindlessly driving and you're not having to actively do a task. You can be constantly setting your mind, because you become what you think about most of the time. So I think setting your mind and living in an attitude of gratitude every single day. So we give all of our patients healing affirmations. And so, because most of patients don't know how to do this, so we give them a set of healing affirmations that they do every day. Then I would say sleep. Your day starts when you go to sleep. So if you're not sleeping, the rest of your day is not going to serve you. And I know the sleep specialist can add a lot to this, but your sleep is where all the repair, regeneration, and so many functions take place. And we don't even know all the incredible immune ramifications of sleep. And so people today are not sleeping because we have lights and people are on computers and they're stimulated with all these other extraneous things. But we need to try to honor our circadian code by going to sleep around 10 and getting 8 hours sleep. So 10 to 6. And so, but the average person really isn't do it. We need to ask our patients, when are you going to bed? Because a lot of people say, oh, I stay up till 12, 1 o'clock. Well, no, that's not really going to serve them. And 50% of the population or more doesn't sleep well. So you've got to get them to sleep. You can't use sleeping pills because sleeping pills are toxins or chemical that will destroy the mitochondria, not to mention destroy your immune system, not to mention cause cellular respiration problems. And so it's like you cannot use sleeping pills. So you've got to use natural substances. Not everybody needs melatonin. If you're 30 years old and you have a sleep disorder, melatonin would not be something you would need because your body should be making it from your pineal gland. So you've got to think, okay, what are the other things? So you've got to examine the patient's surroundings and get them in the right mode of sleeping, but also the right supplements to take, because medications, again, they're all toxins, and to give patients medications would be taking away from their healing potential. Then people need to eat an ancestral diet. They need to eat real food. They've got to avoid processed food. They've got to avoid packaged food. They've got to avoid fake food. They need to eat what nature serves us every day. So that would be good fats, good proteins, and good vegetables and fruits. And so things that are available in their most pure form, organic, grass-fed, no pesticides, no GMOs, no, added any coverings and chemicals and all the things that they can do to food today. So food in its original state would be the best for the human race. I mean, if people have been eating an ancestral diet for a very, very long time, I know there's so much discussion on so many different eating, whether you do vegetarian, if you do keto, but basic rules is get off sugar, get off processed foods, get off chemical foods, get off packaged food, get off foods that have a list of chemicals that you can't read. So there's some basic, very basic rules to follow. Then people need to drink purified water. The water is laden with pharma water, medicine water, parasite water, all kinds of things in the water. And so one thing you have to invest in is a water purification system. Then people need to move. People sit all the time and they're very, very sedentary. That's why we have the obesity, about 50% or more of the population, because people do not move their 800 muscles that they have every day. And the better your muscle mass, the better your body is at rest. And so people have to just focus on what kind of movement they can do, any opportunity they should find, whether it's washing dishes and washing clothes, going to talk to someone instead of sending them an email. Just move, move, and move. You have unbelievable benefit with people moving. Then I think that people every day need to be around other people. It's very important that we all have a social element to our life. We know that the single greatest factor with people's illnesses is loneliness. And so we need to be, having times where we get together as a group and we just enjoy each other. And so we become this disconnected, connected society. So people think if you text someone or if you, email someone, that is connecting. No, we need to actually be hugging one another. We need to be loving one another. We need to be connecting with one another in a physical realm, not just through text and through email and those kinds of ways, because our social gatherings give lots of energy to one another. That's why when we have patients here at the Cancer Center for Healing, we have it all open. We don't have it all separate rooms. We have it as a group and a community so they can heal together. So that's where I would start. Of course, there's always fine tuning because, usually purification, I believe, is a big part of our life today because the average baby is born with about 400 chemicals. So unfortunately, purification, because the word detox is not a good word. Most people think of detox. They think, oh, what am I going to have to do? But if we think about purification, it's something going to be good for your body. There's many ways you can do infrared sauna. I give my patients baths. I have them do cleanses, eating cleanses. I sometimes have them do zeolite or carbon 60. But unfortunately, in this day and time, we are just inundated with an amount of toxins in the environment. And so, unfortunately, it's kind of the new, way of living. So one of my pet peeves is electromagnetic fields, which are everywhere. We're blanketed with the invisible web of electromagnetic fields. We are electrical beings. And so these are electrical things happening around us, and they do have an effect. We know that they affect the cell by its calcium channels, and that we naturally have in our body. So we know that they're doing something to our system. And so we have to, our brain is electrical, our heart is electrical, our nervous system is electrical, everything's electrical. So these aberrant electrical fields have a living effect on us. So I am very, very, aware of this. And it's something that we teach our patients measures that they can do and live with, because it's just increasing more and more. We have 5G and then 6G and then satellites, and then it's just everywhere. And so we've never lived in the world we have today. And we're not taking the precautionary principle in place and creating these protective measures with everything that we're doing with the civilized industrial revolution that we're living in today, technical revolution. And so we're just, and now we see, though, that all these things that we're doing are not serving the human race. It's very, very, very serious. And all of us together are very alarmed, but we need everyone alarmed and taking charge of their personal health, because I always say that we're all interconnected. So if you guys get sick, I am some way affected. Our society as a whole is not sustainable. And so we all together, we need to help each other be the best version of ourselves.
Excellent. So clean your water, eat good food, hug your people, get enough sleep, 8 hours, go to sleep at 10 o'clock, and watch the toxicity levels. I think if we avoid getting toxicity in our liver, it's a lot easier to do that than to try to get it out of the liver later. But that's just one of the things that is not really taught to our society. So what I'd like to do here, ladies and gentlemen, is take a little bit of a step back. Neither you, Dr. Jimmy Kilimanzaglu, or Dr. Rosenthal work with the third-party payer system. You decided you want to step out of that system, and you created something unique in the marketplace, and especially within healthcare. So I wanted to ask you first, Dr. Connealy, why did you decide to leave the system? Everybody seems to be so excited about the hospital systems and all the oncologists out there and the third-party payer insurance model. Why did you decide to do something so drastically different?
Well, I will tell you that I started my practice 37 years ago as a provider under insurance plans. And they used to pay doctors. Now the doctors have to beg to get paid. And so then we're, for every $100, you're lucky you get $25. Plus it's just sick care, and it's very, very fast, quick sick care. What drug are you going to give the patient? And then you move on. And so I decided several years ago, no, there is no way you can properly take care of a patient and deliver healthcare, not sick care, to a patient. And so I decided, no, this is, first of all, it's literally ethically not okay, because there's no way you can just keep giving people. Like today, I had a 36-year-old come in from Texas, and she's already on 5 medicines. And I'm like, well, this cannot be good long-term for her. And that's why she's here. Now she has a history of breast cancer. And then what are you doing if a patient has to take a drug? What are you doing to counterbalance that medication, the damage that it's doing to the cell? And so this is what doctors give out antibiotics just like that, no problem. But look what you're doing, the devastation to the system, to your body system, by just giving antibiotics, much less high blood pressure medicine, cholesterol medicine, or any other medicine. And so it's just not the way we are properly taking care of patients. Now, there are doctors that's all they know. And I will tell you that doctors say, I wasn't trained to do it, but all doctors can start reading functional medicine books. All doctors can go listen to lots of conferences or online. Now there's so many health podcasts. There are so many people that are not doctors, and they have value too, but that are teaching people about health and the science of health. Because all of this is clinically validated. Once a doctor goes to one conference, he or she will say, oh my goodness, I can't go back to work and practice the same way. All they need is one conference, and they won't be able to resume their conventional work, right? Do you guys agree? Yeah. And so doctors just need to get out of their comfort zone and realize that they've got to serve the patient better by doing something that's going to serve the patient better.
Well, here's what it is. I mean, you don't really hear doctors talk about doing Epsom salt baths and eating better food and getting more sleep. And the authenticity of your love for the people you serve just comes across so naturally. But people forget that that's not really how the system is set up when you're in the third-party payer system, because there's a lot of perverse incentives there. So if the insurance company pays for you to do something, but something else is probably better for the patient, you're going to be motivated to do what is not best for the patient, but what's best for, the office. And I think that's a major catastrophic problem with our system of healthcare. And what all of you who are here today is so different is that you're working directly for your patient. You don't work for the insurance company. And that is a unique model. So when we talk about transforming the health of this nation, if that's a possibility, then the infrastructure has to be changed. We have to have a way to work with these people on a regular basis like I find it interesting that you talk about cancer is the second biggest killer in the United States, probably in the world. I don't know.
Right.
Oh, no, well, yeah, the heart disease first, then it's that, and then it's iatrogenic injury. So it's just very interesting that most people don't give it a lot of thought until they're diagnosed, and then they start freaking out and try to figure out what to do, and then they're scared, and the system scares them further to do things that they wouldn't do otherwise. So I think each individual person has to have somebody that kind of works with them on a regular basis to provide the optimization, like to make sure the vitamin D is where it's supposed to be, to make sure the toxic level and toxic burden is reduced on a regular basis, to make sure that he's trying to move a little bit and exercise and eat better and like that. And then doctors like you of your caliber can train these practitioners on a national scale to best serve their clients. And of course, even then, you're going to have people who have to deal with cancer. And I think in your hands, I would feel much more comfortable that you get to take care of those people as well, and have them reverse cancer. But I think not getting cancer is probably a better thing to do.
Well, I always tell people it's way easier to prevent disease than treat the disease. Plus, you're saving patients so much suffering and anguish. Right now, all we do is see these terrible patients, whatever age, the disease they're suffering from. It's a horrific experience. And so, I think if we showed people that, like what it's like to go through treatments, people would, probably maybe take a second, third look at the inventory of their health. And so, because the value of health is not esteemed in this country. And so it needs to be really everyone's number one value is health, because everything hinges on the quality of your health. Because if you don't have yourself, you can't have a connection with anyone else. You can't have a connection with your family. You can't have connection with friends because you're sick and you're disabled. So your whole life is less than what it should be. And so healthcare has to be, health has to be the number one value for all of us. But we have to be taught that from very early on.
Yeah.
And so we need to be as a culture and as a nation esteeming healthcare and what's the best way to do that. And we know what it is. We do know right now, today, we have the answers right now to prevent most diseases. Okay. But we're not focused on prevention and predictive and personalized medicine. This is just not where it's at.
Well, I think that if the majority of physicians were like you, who were brave enough to step out of that system and create a direct client-patient relationship, we would have the other side of the conversation. You have the one side where, it's $4.3 trillion worth of disease management. So it's very profitable. And who wants to take the time to talk about vitamin D? If vitamin D is low and nobody talks about it, nobody cares, eventually you're going to make it to my office and I'm going to put you on chemotherapy and do all these kind of very expensive interventions. So, it's abhorrent, but that's kind of the way the system is structured. And I think that the more doctors like the ones who are here today get a voice in a platform, and we as a client, as a patient, we're American people are very intelligent people. When you show them something that makes sense and that they can pursue, they will invest the time and the money to do it. And I think the pursuit of this crowning decade, that final decade that we get to be on this planet, whatever that is, 80, 90, 100, 110, 120, whatever it happens to be, if you can live fully during that time and look presentable, I think that's a miracle. And I've met people like this. I've met, this gentleman here, Gene Scala on Long Island. He was 105 when I met him. He was bowling every Wednesday, made his own clothes, played the saxophone, was very popular with the ladies, 80 and above. And so he was very, very inspirational. And I think if one person can do it, then ultimately, maybe some of us can do it if and we have all the science and the technology and the genetics and all this testing that we're doing. So I don't see why people can't live longer, reduce the disease of aging, and then create structures so people are optimized for the duration of their life. They don't have to fall into these pits of illness, like chronic fatigue, brain fog, inexplicable weight gain, poor sleep, like all these kind of things. I think they could be mitigated as you go through life rather than try to fix them once they evolve. Yeah.
Right. Well, again, it all boils down to what are our priorities? And unfortunately, you mentioned the $4.3 trillion is the priority, not the health of each individual patient. And so, because if we created health in people, then that 4.3 trillion would go down, correct? And so, it's there's no interest because we're only talking about profiteering from suffering as opposed to restoring healthcare to humanity. And so, you mentioned people living 105. We should be able to live to 120 years. And it's not just how long you live, it's your health span, how long you have health span, not just how long, because we have a lot of people living long, but they're disabled living long. And so that's very, very difficult on themselves and on families. It's a tremendous amount of social burden. So, but if we really taught people how to live to 100, which, they do it, it is being done. But again, we have so many different things that we start early on with life, and there's something in your body called the cell danger response. So the more things that we add to our body that can affect the cell danger response, which is everything you're exposed to, whether it's stress, whether it's a vaccine, whether it's a toxin, whether it's a surgery, whatever, all of that is a cell danger response, whether it's mold or heavy metals. And the more that your body gets overwhelmed, the body cannot take care of itself, and then it collapses. And that's where we are today. We have so many inflictions that we're doing to humanity, and we give all these patients so many different things that they don't need, because I know I do it every day. My oldest patient is 100, and they do not take one medication. So how is it that I can do it, and I know the other doctors can do it, and so other people can learn the same thing? Because I'm 66, my husband and I both do not take any medication. So we do it. So it can be done. And my patients come to me specifically to get off medications. So it can be done. There's a natural substance for everything you probably need to treat. And so doctors we got to go back and embrace what doctors did 100 years ago, which they did all natural substances 100 years ago. In fact, US is about 5% of the world population. Over 50 to probably 75% of the world is treated naturally, believe it or not. So other countries they use natural substances to heal their people. And so we've got to, and those humans are the same kind of humans that live here in the United States. And so we need to embrace not just our principles, but the worldly principles of 8 billion people that do heal themselves, whether it's homeopathy, whether it's herbs, whether it's, other interventions, energy treatments, whatever it is. We need to but we all have to think about how is it going to hurt the patient? What is the good, bad, and the ugly of everything that we're doing to the patient? And then doctors need to properly do informed consent about everything. Whatever you're giving the patient, you should be communicating to the patient what this can do to you. Just like I mentioned before, antibiotics, like we do cancer treatment here every day. But what we do is we tell the patient, okay, if you need to do this biopsy, here are all the protective measures you need to do if you need a biopsy. If you need surgery, here's what you do before, during, and after the surgery to ensure the best success and prevent the cancer from spreading to other parts of the body. because when you have surgery, you're creating very angry circulating tumor cells. Then if you do chemo, you're damaging every single cell in your body. So how can doctors work every day using a chemical substance that destroys every single cell? How would you get the patient well when you're damaging them with chemotherapy or the other cocktail of drugs? Because your mitochondria are under attack, just like I talked about the cell danger response. Your body's undergoing danger every single day. Well, the doctor's got to be doing protective measures for the immune system, the nutrients, the toxicity, all these supportive things for the patient to endure chemotherapy. And then radiation is the same thing. So all doctors, whether you're giving statins, which most people do not need statins, but if you need a medication, how are you protecting the patient from that medication you're going to give them? And doctors freely prescribe medications all day long without taking the physiological, biochemical, bioenergetic insult to every cell in your body when you do that. And so that's why we're in the problems that we are, is because we've allowed this system to, take control. Because, I used to say there was a warranty until you're 40. Well, now I can't say that, because the increase in 30-year-olds with cancer, 25, 30-year-olds, is dramatically increased in the last couple of years. So now if a young person comes into you, you have to assume they have something serious and work backwards, because we're living in very, very different times. And all you have to do is look at the canaries in the mine. The young people are the canaries in the mine, telling us we have a 911 on our hands. And we as a society are looking the other way.
Yep. Dr. Connealy, I wanted to ask you, we spoke about a lot of important things. I wanted to ask you something most people don't really think about, and that is oral health as it relates to cancer. And from what I understand, the little that I know, is you have all the nerves that run into the body and into the brain that come from the mouth. And the majority of the intervention we actually get is in the mouth, from amalgam fillings to root canals to extractions to a million different things. So if you have an infection, a silent infection in the mouth, how does it correlate with cancer?
Right. Well, you mentioned a couple of different things. First of all, you mentioned mercury. They're actually an amalgam, which is mercury and nickel and silver. And so we don't, most dentists do not do those today. I'm sure there's some dentists, because I've seen it in patients' mouth, but there is no place for any kind of heavy metal in your mouth. And so mercury is like an anti-nutrient. So meaning it's like it goes against and destroys like your nutrients that you need. And so mercury fillings have no place. So those should all be replaced by a biological dentist who knows the proper removal of heavy metal amalgams. Then chronic infections. You mentioned about root canals. Root canals are a chronic infection. Yes, they travel through the nerve and go into your brain, but also the biggest thing is they suppress your immune system. And every one of your teeth relates to an organ in your body. So there are many dentists who can relate the tooth with the medical problem that the patient has. So there are dentists, though, that can successfully remove root canals if it's not a huge undertaking, with proper cleansing and ozone and laser. But a lot of times they have to remove the tooth completely. And so, which happens a lot of the time. Now, people also have receding gums and chronic infections in their mouth. So you're basically, that is having an entire effect on the entire body. So you've got to partner with a biological dentist who truly understands the oral connection. And now more and more every day, we're seeing the oral connection of all diseases, not just cancer, but Alzheimer's and heart disease. And so the dentist of today needs to not just be drilling and doing that kind of thing. They need to be doing a proper assessment, with nutrition and all the facets of living we just talked about earlier. They need to be addressing the whole person and not just their mouth. And so, it's a very, very serious connection of mouth is the gateway to the rest of your body.
Amen. Dr. Jimmy, you want to say a word about that?
Yeah, I mean, there's obviously a very strong correlation between the cardiovascular system and the oral cavity, immune system. It's definitely a portal to different systems. But we have all this information and motivation, and we want to share this knowledge with our patients. And I think everybody here can relate to this. Sometimes you have people that are just not motivated enough, or they don't have that positive attitude. And I mean, Dr. Connealy, you mentioned it, thoughts, attitude, gratitude, right? If they're all mopey-dopey and depressed and pessimistic, we can give them all these recommendations. It's not going to come to fruition.
Right. Well, my famous saying is, when the student is ready, the teacher will arrive. Trust me, something will get their attention, but you can't help somebody who doesn't want to help themselves. So usually cancer gets everybody's attention, I would say, all the time. Okay. And second of all, sometimes people just need the biggest lesson. But that's also, think about it, as a society, we are reactive, not proactive for everything. We just wait until disaster strikes, and then we decide to do something. And if we all, like if you look at that book on physical degeneration that was written by the famous dentist, I forget his name, and he went around and traveled children all over the world, and it was directly related to how they ate. So, my kids, for example, never needed braces because, I knew all about this, and I was a fanatic about their nutrition. And so they never needed braces. I never had wisdom teeth removed. I never had fillings. I never had those things because I learned all this. And as a mother, I'm like, no, this is the way we can do this and prevent this. And so I never used antibiotics. I never used antibiotics on my children. And they're, my twins are 29 years of age. And so because, they grew up with the focus of all the things I talked about, believe it or not. And we didn't have cell phones, fortunately, at that early age or anything. So they didn't get them until they started driving. And so I had the opportunity to be the proper, shepherd, so to speak, of them and save them. Just think of the aggravation. I think about, they've never missed a day of life. They've never missed a day of school. They never miss work. And it's because, and look at the life they have as a result of that, So, but all parents, that's why we need to constantly get this education out to transform the future of health and humanity, because we are at a very, very serious crossroads. You said that, Alex, in the beginning. We cannot continue on. This collision is at its highest peak, and we all together need to get as many people's attention as possible, because it can save themselves. And that is what is the bottom line, is we've got to teach people to restore health to themselves and live the best life. Like I say, if you have kids today, you should be a Navy SEAL and a genius with the information that we have today and available. So,
yeah, well, there's information and a lot of also misinformation. So in my perfect world, you would be like the health czar of the United States. Jimmy, maybe the president, and Dr. Rosenthal, you'd be like special forces. You control the armies and the navies of the United States. So what I wanted to ask you also, Dr. Connealy, we're kind of like, there's a lot of different developments happening in healthcare, from the technology to the genetics to maybe medications. And I wanted to ask you about stem cells. I know it's a touchy subject in the health circles, but do you see any future in this arena for cancer, for other things that people are dealing with?
Right. Well, stem cells is a very, very broad subject. And I am very interested. I've been interested in this probably for about, I don't know, 17 years. So I personally have read a lot of it, and I have experienced some of it myself. Some of the things cannot be done in this country that we could possibly utilize. And so a lot of it has to be. So when I was pregnant with my twins 29 years ago, I had a difficult pregnancy, not pregnancy, delivery. So it was a comedy of errors done by the doctors. They told me I needed to come into the hospital and to deliver the babies. And so they, because I was already ready to be delivered. But anyway, so they gave me an epidural because I had twins. And so, but the epidural they gave me, and I've delivered many babies in my life. And so I was feeling the contractions, and the nurses heard me screaming, and they're like, wow, we gave her an epidural, but like, I don't know. So finally I told the anesthesiologist, who was a fellow is a doctor he's over a resident. So he's not fully practicing physician. And he said, oh, well, no, it takes time. And I'm like, no, anesthetics work quickly. So, but of course I didn't want to be a big IQ patient and demanding. So I just like, okay, whatever, let him be the doctor. So then of course I started to dilate. And so then they go, oh, we've got to bring her into a delivery room. So they brought me to a delivery room. And so my complicated OB, because I had twins, said, oh, give her a bolus of medicine all at once. Well, they gave me a bolus of medicine, and all of a sudden the room became like crazy. I had like a million pans clanging in my head. The ceiling had, I remember when I took pathology, you could see the pathology, it looked like pathology slides all over on the ceiling, and the lights were just like blinking like loud. So I told my doctor, because I'm awake, I said, stop everything. Something is radically wrong. Well, what happened is the medicine they gave me went all over my body and was causing toxicity. So my doctor was really scared because he knew something was not right. So he goes, okay, let's just get baby A out. So they get baby A out, and then they go, okay, we got to do a version. A version's a turning of baby B. So the baby was sideways on my abdomen, and the head was going towards the vaginal canal. And they said, okay, we got to turn the baby with the ultrasound. So they tried to do the turning. Well, the other doctor had her hand and accidentally pulled out the cord. So they go, oh, we've got to do an emergency C-section. The doctor said, okay, we got to do emergency C-section without anesthesia because, we have to get in there because the Apgar of the baby was going down and the baby was suffering fetal distress. So they gave me anesthesia. After they got the baby out. So anyway, of course, that was a very traumatic experience. And so I suffered something called Sheehan syndrome. Sheehan syndrome is when this pituitary shuts down during pregnancy. So anyway, so after my pregnancy, I'm still not well at all. I'm not feeling good. I get mastitis. I end up back in the hospital with 105 fever. Anyway, to make a long story short, I spent the next 5 or 6 years going to doctor after doctor after doctor after doctor, trying them to figure out what was wrong with me, because I didn't feel my normal self. A lot. So they go, so this doctor would say, oh, try this. This one say this, that, otherwise they probably wouldn't have listened to me if I weren't a doctor. Anyway, so I had this patient come in to see me, and they told me that they had a pituitary transplant. And I'm like, oh, this sounds very interesting. I said, where'd you get this done? She goes, oh, in Mexico. And I said, well, can you give me the name of the doctor that did this for you? Because they did it for anti-aging, and they had a school of gerontology. And so I speak Spanish, fortunately. So I called this doctor up and I said, look, my patient said she got a pituitary. And I said, he tells me like exactly what they do. They take fetal pigs or sheep, and they do a trepanation, which is a slicing of the fetal head, and they take out the pituitary and the hypothalamus. So anyway, I said, well, where did you learn? And so then he told me where he learned at the School of Gerontology. So I called them up, and this was before internet and, being able to connect and everything. So I called them up and I go, okay, look, tell me, he heard what you do. I want to come and see you. So I get on a plane and a donkey and a bus, and I get there. And anyway, I had no fear whatsoever, zero fear. The doctor comes to my hotel to give me a special vitamin IV. And then they go, we're going to see you tomorrow morning to do this, transplant. So sure enough, I go to the clinic and they gave me another shot that was very painful, but it was vitamins, but very most painful shot I've ever had. And anyway, so they make an incision, they put anesthesia in my arm, they make an incision, they bring the head in and they do a trepanation, and they took the hypothalamus and pituitary, put it in my arm because all cells know exactly where to go.
Yeah, well, I'm not a doctor, but that's the pituitary is like in here, isn't it?
So,
Okay.
but they put it but you're all cells. Like when you get a bone marrow transplant, they don't open up your bone marrow and put it in there. All cells know exactly where to go. So anyway, in 24 hours, I was like back to normal. I was like, oh my God, this is like a miracle. So I personally know. So now in the world today, not in the US, they do have fetal cells. So the ideal thing for you to do, if you were going to restore organ function, you would take brain to replace brain, heart to replace heart, kidney to replace kidney. So again, like I said, that's not available in the US. Okay. So, but that is like the ideal way to repair an organ or gland. All right. And I personally, like I said, I've had it. I'm not in the US, but I did have it. Pardon me?
That's an incredible story. Wow.
Yeah.
And
so I know
that is very brave, actually.
Yeah, exactly.
Go to Mexico in certain body parts of farm animals.
Yeah, exactly. But I'm alive here to tell about it many years later. So anyway, so I'm very interested in this because I know. So I have some of my patients go somewhere else to get different cells. And then I use other cells like mitoorganelles from a company in Asia and Europe for things that I can do here. So there are people who use other kinds of cells like placenta stem cells and exosomes and mesenchymal cells. So, but it's very limited here in the US. So what you may need, you probably aren't going to get what you need a lot in this country. They do have Wharton's jelly that can also be utilized. So again, in the US, some of the stuff will work, but if you really want to do heavier lifting, you'll probably have to go outside the country.
I mean, the things I've seen through stem cells is pretty miraculous for things that have no other, for people who have no other options dealing with chronic conditions that are pretty frightening. Dr. Rosenthal, any thoughts about this topic?
Well, I mean, I think Dr. Connealy started by talking all the top 10 things you mentioned were all electromagnetic, right? And if we understand mitochondria and Doug Wallace's work, we realize that if we can raise the redox of the cell, we can reverse disease and aging. And so, stem cells are, and regenerative technologies as such are essentially rebuilding the bioenergetics of the cell and bringing those cells to a more energetic, youthful place, which is really what is the absence of disease and cancer. I mean, these are all bioenergetic diseases.
And I would never, ever tell a patient to go get stem cells until they did the basics. Do not waste your time, money on doing, because those are expensive depending on where you go. And I tell people, no, you need to clean up because otherwise you're just wasting money. You're putting it in a dirty body. So, and you have to deal with the functionality aspect, as he was saying a minute ago. So you can't, you're ridiculous if you're.
That's the whole idea of optimization. That's what I'm thinking. Like you get your vitamin D up, you remove the heavy metals, you clean up your mouth, get the bioming properly, digesting the food. What else do you do? You do the basic, make sure you get all the vitamins and the minerals, all this stuff. You optimize the body so it has every chance to kind of regenerate itself. And then if you need to do like serious interventional expensive things, then you go do that as well. And why not?
Well, you might have to do that because you've damaged yourself so much, like people who are in kidney failure or liver failure. I mean, they've already didn't do all those things, and that's why they're in the mess they are. But you still have to, rebuild your miraculous body from the ground up.
All right, well, great. Let's see what our guests here have to say, and we'll interact with them a little bit. I'll give out the books, and then I'll let you guys enjoy the rest of your evening. Nice to see you. Well, thank you. Great to see you, Wendy. Constance, I'm not a practitioner. However, if empowered to do so, I would place more focus in healthcare spending on holistic health programming and alternative medical treatments. Yeah, me too. Karen is cell search similar to RGCC for CTC count. I don't know what that is.
Yeah, so those are laboratories. I'm familiar with both. There's Cell Search. There's several companies that do what they call circulating tumor cell testing. I have experience in a lot of them, and it's the fastest growing field. There's 5 articles a day on circulating tumor cell testing. I presently use Cell Search and I use RGCC. I personally think RGCC is much more informative and accurate. I've used them for probably 15 years. There is another lab called MainTrack out of Europe that's very good. So the newer test here in the US, they have Gallery, which detects 50 different cancers. That's, okay, but I think still circulating tumor cell testing, and you're going over extensive blood work and bioenergetic testing are probably the most beneficial ways for cancer testing.
Oh, it's pretty good off the top of your head there. Let's see. Clarity on needed for biologic dentistry in cancer. Nancy Marco. So that would be Dr. Kilimidzoglu. I'm sure he'll be happy to chat with you, reach out to him. Guys, if you could put your websites into the, I don't know what is the chat. I can see chat here from Joshua, from Dr. Rosenthal. Is the chat not working? Let's see if you can throw your websites in there so we have them. What is the panel's consensus on biopsies? Do they spread cancer cells? Are liquid biopsies there yet? That's Jean.
Yeah. Okay. Liquid biopsies. I'm trying to get my computer back. I don't want to push too much buttons, but can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, perfect. I'll get my camera back on. But anyway, so liquid biopsies are definitely in the future. Okay. And RGCC, like I said, is, the oldest. It's been around, like I said, for about 25 years. They're probably the oldest lab in the world on RGCC, on circulating tumor cells. So they have a panel called OncoTrace. I lost my camera. Anyway, I pressed a button. Anyway, and so it is, probably the best so far. But like I said, there is something called MainTrack. There is something called Gallery. Like I said, Gallery's the latest, greatest in the mix of everything. So I think there's value, but my experience, which I would say is extremely vast in using all these testings, because I'm not married to any lab, I just want to get some validated information right now, would be RGCC. There's another lab called Menarini Cell Search, which is the one she talked about. But so I kind of compare. There's another lab out of India called Datar. So again, I feel like, because I've been doing this for a long time, comparing all these different labs, and so far the confluent results I get best with RGCC. And so I have no affiliation with the lab. I just use them. And I also am an expert in bioenergetic testing, which is based upon the science of electroacupuncture according to Voll, who was a physicist, medical doctor, who determined the acupuncture points and what organ they were, so we can look at the functionality index of an organ. But also I do something called the cancer cascade, which is a timeline from one cancer cell to tumors, about 10 years. So we have literally 9 years of opportunity to prevent cancer. 9 years, think about it. And so, but by energy precedes action. Before you have a tumor, before you have a heart attack, many things happened. And so if you could interrupt those occurrences by looking at the energy of the body, you can prevent the catastrophic event. So, I've been doing that for literally over 25 years. So I feel like when I talk about in my book and what we do here, there's probably no one that can do what we're doing, even though I teach people all over the world. I share my knowledge. So it's just getting everybody to get, going and doing it. So I do train doctors. I do have several doctors. I've trained all the doctors here, obviously, but even other doctors around the United States, they'll get on the phone with the patient or Zoom, and then I go over everything and what the doctor needs to do. So I know that's a long-winded question, but it's all about experience, because when somebody comes out with a new laboratory, okay, you got to do hundreds of tests. It's like these new weight loss drugs. Okay, let 1 million people try, and then you see all the problems. All right. Right. Like you're seeing all the problems, gastroparesis and pancreatic burnout, pancreatic cancer, continual weight gain and muscle loss and all these problems, because it's a big problem now, because the more people take it, the more you see the problems with these medications that don't have a history yet. So it's just like any new test, you got to do 100 tests and see how many, because like I used a new lab in San Diego called Biocept. I sent 25 specimens and all the patients came back 0. And I'm like, well, that's mathematically impossible when they all had cancer to have circulating tumor cell. So, but I'm always, they always come to me, these labs come to me, and I go, okay, I'll try you and see what happens. There is another test called circulating tumor DNA by a lab called Signatera. So if you have a history of cancer, like colon cancer or breast cancer, they will look for the circulating tumor DNA, which is very different than circulating tumor cells. Circulating tumor DNA shows the DNA from the cancer tumor itself, whereas the circulating tumor cell is the wannabe cancer in a new part of your body. And so, it's totally 2 different tests. So that's another thing you have to differentiate for the patients, the difference in all the different testing. So I've, done so many thousands of different things. So I know what's working, what kind of works and what doesn't work. So.
Ms. Minsky has a question. Please comment on the use of vitamin D with the inclusion of MK7 for endothelial health and bone.
Yeah, fabulous. I think most people would need to combine D3 with K2. And so because there's so much about for bone, for prevention of heart disease, cancer. So I would recommend that most patients take a combination of both D3 and K2.
Wonderful. Wendy has a question. What is your opinion on how Dr. Gonzalez treated everyone with cancer with individual diets that were all very different? Some meat heavy as opposed to mostly raw and living foods diet like Hippocrates for reversing cancer. They're so different fundamentally. He also did liver enzymes from what I recall.
Pancreatic enzymes.
Pancreatic.
Yes. So I know Dr. Gonzalez very well. I know his wife too. She's alive. Dr. Gonzalez is not around. But I do a lot of what he does already. And because he took the work of William Kelly, who wrote the book, One Answer to Cancer years ago, which is online if anybody wants to read. And Dr. William Kelly had stage 4 pancreatic cancer and cured himself and then went on. He was a dentist and he went on and cured other people with his protocol. So I've taken the best of like William Kelly, Nick Gonzalez, all these other people that I've had in my world, And yes, you have to meet the patient where they are as far as eating. Some people need meat, some people need, raw fruits and veggies, some people need this. I mean, so everybody's different. If you have a high hemoglobin A1C, which is a reflection of your sugar over 90 days, you need to get them more keto. So again, you have to assess each person and decide based upon their diagnosis and their blood work, what's going to be the best eating program. So there's not one size fits all for anybody. So like some people say, I eat vegetarian, I feel terrible. Okay. And then some people eat keto, I feel terrible. So again, you've got to really customize the eating. So what Dr. Gonzalez would do is he would have the metabolic typing diet. So he'd give you this very 500 question questionnaire, and he'd fill out what it was. And then it would, say, okay, then this is going to be the best program for you.
Wow. Marlee has a question about sleep. Do you recommend melatonin for sleep?
Well, I'll answer that, and then he can answer also too, because he's a sleep specialist. So melatonin is really beneficial because it's an antioxidant, anti-cancer, and anti-inflammatory. But if you're 30 years old, your pineal gland, which is what makes melatonin and controls your circadian rhythm, you should be functioning optimally to produce your own melatonin. So I probably wouldn't use melatonin in a 30-year-old. But now if you're a 60-year-old patient, I would probably be using melatonin, starting out with 10, 20. Sometimes I work the patients up to about 180 milligrams of melatonin. But like a patient told me today that she's on 10 and she increased it to 20 and she says, I feel tired all day. Well, I don't want the patient feeling tired all day. So I decreased her dose and managed it like that. So it depends how old you are, and because maybe you just need to learn some sleep rhythm as opposed to taking melatonin if you're 30 years old or 25 or 35 years old, because you shouldn't theoretically need melatonin at that early age. Although, think our life today is so artificial and technical that we're destroying the natural functionality of our body.
Dr. Rosal, you want to chime in a little bit?
Absolutely. I'm taking my melatonin right here. This little, well, you can't see it, but this frame that I just put on is stopping some of the artificial frequencies that will be suppressing my melatonin. So the absence of a toxin is health, right? I mean, that's so we can, I do agree with Dr. Connealy that, the use of melatonin is a mixed bag of questions. We know there's a lot of great research on high dose melatonin, but there's also not long-term studies. For me, as a circadian biologist, as a sleep specialist, melatonin is probably the most highly quantized and coupled mitochondrial substance that we have, which is based on light in our environment. So I think it's a really highly coupled epigenetic factor, and it creates some discomfort to recommend it to people that, I always start with something that's natural, and then, we can use it thereafter. But again, as Dr. Connealy said, this idea of informed consent, we don't really know what 20 years of melatonin looks like on someone, because it is kind of a hormone and chemical, but it's also an antioxidant. It's also an aromatase inhibitor. It lowers estrogen. It also helps our mitochondria regenerate. So it has so many functions. My gut says it's a great chemical. Is taking it on its own great for everyone? I don't know that the answer to that is a blanket yes. So I agree.
Awesome. Thank you very much. I'm going to just do a couple more questions and then we'll wrap it up. Julie has a question. Are CBD and THC products okay? Sleepy gummies, for example, are 2.5. Do they have an effect on mitochondria?
Well, I use CBD in my practice with THC, depending obviously again on the patient and the situation, but we have the endocannabinoid system that can be very, very beneficial and wonderful to get balance. So it can be it's one of those multifunctional substances as an anti-inflammatory, antioxidant, anti-cancer, all those good things. So again, depending on what you're using it for, there's different forms of delivery, but I think can be very, very beneficial Like if my patients can't sleep, I will use a combination of a CBD THC tincture. Or if somebody has lots of pain, of course, it's a very beneficial. Some people use it for their mood. Some people use it for all different things. So I do think there's a great value in utilizing that in the medical system.
Alexis has a question about fasting. How do you feel about fasting in cancer or fasting in general?
I love fasting, especially if the patient is overweight. Fasting will be a fast way to get the body healthier faster. Like, so, because with cancer, you are dealing with the 10-year problem. And so if I have a patient who is very overweight and they have fatty liver and they need to address the cancer, I tell them, look, okay, how long do you think you can fast? And they'll say, okay, I can do 3 days, 7 days. The longest I've ever had patients fast is 30 days. I had a patient come in with a second opinion for bladder cancer. And because they wanted to remove his bladder. And he goes, I don't want a fake bladder. And I said, okay, what are you willing to do? And okay, I'll do whatever you tell me. I said, okay, go on a 30-day fast. And in 30 days, they did a cystoscopy and his tumor was gone. So there's a great documentary called The Science of Fasting. If anybody wants to learn about fasting, I would highly recommend they watch that. But fasting can be great for all kinds of diseases. Fasting, though, I'm not into long-term. I think if you have a serious problem, you need to reset your system and you need to get healthy, okay? If you practice health every day, that you don't really need to fast, or, and you can intermittent fast and you can do 1 day fasting, but not this drastic thing. We have to do drastic because we need drastic measures for drastic problems. And so, but personally, I've done fast, I've done several day fast, but I don't need to fast on a regular basis because I literally practice, health every single day of my life. And that's another thing. People always say, well, when are you going to be done with this? Well, you're never done with your health. There's no finish line to health. It's a constant 24/7 intentional, conscientious decision every day. And so if you do that, you don't need to fast. So that's just my, personal opinion. But a lot of people, unfortunately, like I said before, 93% of the population is metabolically unhealthy. Fasting would probably be good for them. But if you literally pay attention to your health on a regular basis, fasting may not be necessary, especially now. And if I have a patient who's very tiny and they don't need to lose weight, I'll say no fasting whatsoever. So it's really for patients who are metabolically unhealthy and they need to lose weight, and they have weight to lose, that they need to do that kind of thing. So it can be very beneficial. It's been around. There isn't, there's so many books written on fasting. And so there's benefit. But again, everybody always wants to look for that magic bullet. I tell people there's hundreds of magic bullets and you need to embrace all of them and do all of them and start practicing today, learning and educating yourself and going outside the box and learn everything about your own personal health, because self-care is the new healthcare. It's the only thing that's going to work is you taking care of yourself.
Amen. Constance had a question. I had a breast biopsy 1 year ago. What are protective measures that one should take in preparation for a breast biopsy?
Okay, so all of our patients get protection if they see me before. And so usually what I have the patient do, first of all, I always do all their blood work. And then I put them on, I'd prefer if they did an IV vitamin C the day before and the day after, because we know how IV vitamin C kills circulating tumor cells and cancer. And then I put them on Tagamet because Tagamet's very protective for cancer for 1 month during that time, because it decreases inflammation and they have metastasis. The other thing I put the patient on is oral vitamin C. And I always put the patients on pancreatic enzymes also. And then I put them on modified citrus pectin. Modified citrus pectin is the outside covering of lemon, limes, and grapefruit that decreases inflammation and metastasis. So that's what I do before, and I have them continue that for 1 month. They may continue the modified citrus pectin thereafter, because that's something good for everybody today.
All right, great. I'll take one more question and then we'll wrap it up. Yvonne has a question or a statement. Extracting myself from the conventional model. Personally, I found myself conscience stricken. I need to do some work on myself, forgiveness, etc. My patient load includes all ages, cradle to grave. What do you think? The doctor also have to be aware as they transition. So I guess it's about transitioning from the allopathic model to functional.
Well, I'm a conventional doctor and I do conventional things in my practice. And I have an electronic medical record. So I do conventional. So I think doctors need to understand that they can they're going to still use everything that they've learned since medical school. But what happens after medical school is really the difference. And then also start learning everything, start reading everything you can read, you can listen to. There's podcasts, there's so many lectures that you can go to online on Zoom and everything, and just be open to everything, and then work with somebody who already is doing it for many years and learn from them, because they're already living it and breathing it and have it down. And so I know that all the conferences that today, there's people that have been, doing this 20, 30 years. So you want to learn from those people. But the science is all there. It's amazing, all the science of all these things. And don't be afraid that it's too, voodoo-ish or out there, because it's not. There is a scientific validation for everything: mistletoe, curcumin, vitamin C. There's so much science on all these things, and not be closed-minded. A lot of doctors work in a little box, and you can't possibly take care of a patient working in this little box of one little drug to fix things, because drugs do not fix anything. And so they need to just, embrace it all, and it'll be overwhelming because there's so much information to learn, and continual, waterfall of information to learn.
Well, we could probably stay here overnight because we have like a million more questions. I'm going to wrap it up though, guys. Thank you so much for asking the questions. I appreciate that. And our great panel, Dr. Connealy, thank you. I'd like, first of all, if you guys could pick somebody from the questions, and we're going to give away some of your life transforming books to the people who participate in the question. So Dr. Connealy, you can be first. Find me somebody who you want to give a book to.
Well, I'm not in the chat, so they're going to have to.
It's in the question Q&A.
I know, but I don't even have that. So you guys are going to have to do that.
Okay, we'll pick somebody on your behalf.
Yeah, thank you.
Dr. Jimmy?
Yeah, Marley Perry asked a lot of good questions.
Yeah, Marley Perry is a champion. Okay, Marley Perry, excellent. Dr. Rosenthal?
I like Alexis Cheney for the first question. That was a great.
Excellent. I'm gonna on behalf of Dr. Connealy, I'll pick Constance Small. She did a good job. And Karen Hartley, Jean Ohm, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and one more. Fiona Anderson asked a question, but we didn't answer it this time. We'll answer it next time. Anderson. Guys, if you want to, I put my email in the thing there, alex@showing.com. If you want to email me your mailing address, I'll get the books out to all of you. And as we wrap it up, I just wanted to ask you guys if you want to say a couple of words to close the program. We'll start with Jimmy, please.
Yes, I think everybody can relate that the message for today is take ownership of your own health. You guys know that your bodies are miracles. Trust in that. And I know it can sound very daunting and overwhelming. I mean, we talked about a lot of good pearls that you can use. Don't get overwhelmed. Pick 3 that you think you can immediately incorporate. And little by little, you can add other things to your routine.
Beautiful. Dr. Rosenthal?
Yeah, I would just say for those who got brainwashed by this idea that we're entitled to health, just as a reminder that this is your new full-time job. And if you dedicate yourself, there won't be a finish, right? That was what Dr. Connealy was saying. If you take this seriously, you'll get the longest return on this investment that you possibly could. So go get it.
Awesome. Dr. Connealy, final thoughts?
Right. If you don't spend time, energy, and money on your wellness, you'll be spending all of it on your illness. So the best thing, like Joshua said, is you just need to make a decision that you are worth being the most incredible functioning miracle that you could possibly be. And it is overwhelming in the beginning because there's just so much to know and learn, but start, like Jerry said, with one little thing. Get your conscious thoughts organized and only speak to yourself with beautiful words. And then start with the thing. So you start with one thing, get it down for a month. Then the next month, take the next big plight. But never give up on yourself and don't give up on anyone else.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, everybody. I put my website there for the nurse practitioners that would like to meet with me. My calendar is on that page, showinc.com. I'd love to meet and discuss some of the things we're working on. And for those of you whose name we mentioned, please send me your mailing address. And I want to thank all of you for being here. We had a wonderful attendance, almost 200 people, really amazing. And Dr. Connealy, I want to thank you for your generosity, your brilliance, your commitment, your passion, your courage. Just what a treasure you are, a national treasure. And as soon as I have my power, I will vote you in as the health czar of the United States. Gentlemen, we've been working together for a long time. I appreciate you tremendously. Thank you for being here. And thank you for all your great work. And everyone, thank you again for joining us. Feel good. God bless. Good night. Bye-bye.
Thank you.